so much to David, who's done some incredible work, and those of you who were there last night. The praise was almost hagiographic, but it was tempered by the fact that it was entirely deserved. And David has done some amazing work, and I have to admit, one of the things I'm kind of jealous about in the past is that I do a lot of college campus speaking too, and David's absolutely right that I'm sort of in the youth auxiliary of the David Horowitz enemies list. These left-wing bloggers, and when I was at an old speech that I haven't given in years, that my speakers bureau still said I would talk about, and so they pitched it, and I didn't even know that they were doing this. It was, give war a chance, and which is all PJ to work on anyway. But 2 months ago, I was asked to speak at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and the Daily Kos crowd had gotten so enraged about this, and Glenn Greenwald, is another idiotic left-wing blogger, hypes it up so much that there were people in California talking about renting buses to come and protest. And the school was so freaked out. I mean, it's amazing how on tenterhooks they are at the University of Massachusetts, which I believe there's a good piece to be written for like front page or one of these places on the University of Massachusetts Amherst. They're like the Balkans, that old expression Bismarck had about the Balkans, that they export more history than they can consume domestically. The University of Massachusetts exports more political correctness than it can consume domestically. That famous guy at the University of Pennsylvania, the whole water buffalo incident from a long time ago, used to be the housing director at the University of Massachusetts. That more recent thing at the University of Delaware, where you had to sort of if you wanted to be an RA, you would basically have to testify about the gender inequities that you suffered in your life and all sorts of weird stuff, and talk about your sex life and how you've been date raped, or all this crazy stuff. Was the housing director who replaced that housing director at the University of Massachusetts. And so the whole place has just got this hothouse paranoid feel to it. And I get there, I have 2 Massachusetts State Police bodyguards that have to follow me at all times. And they've got the earpieces, they wait outside the men's room, and they talk about stage fright, and then there were 2 more plainclothes Massachusetts State Police in the audience in case someone rushed the stage. They wanted to do full metal detector pat-down. For me? But anyway, the reason I'm sort of jealous is, David goes through that stuff all the time, but he's also been pie, and I've never been pie, and I go to these college campuses and I keep waiting for some kid to pie me, and I have this, how you daydream about what would you do if kind of thing, and I always have these fantasies of just turning into a helicopter of fists, and Bill Crystal, when he got pie, he just didn't want to use this. I was going to charge in, and I think it would be great to have a video on YouTube of me just, beating stuffing out of some It's a perfectly defensible position to have. If I charge you, what's in that pie. I can be kosher, I got animal products. But something tells me I'm not going to get pie here. So we'll keep the dream alive. I've been going around the southern out, the entire state. I was in San Francisco 2 days ago too. Speaking mostly to Republican women's federated groups, and it's very interesting to see how they really are the shock troops of the Republican Party in the state and maybe in the country. They're very impressive, yet slightly intimidating women. And excuse me, but I've been giving sort of the standard, here's what my book is about kind of talk. And my sense is from talking to a lot of you beforehand, a good number of you know what the book is about, or have read most of the book, or some of the book, or have heard me give much of the spiel on radio, so I'm not going to sort of reprise all of that. Instead, I'll just sort of talk for a few minutes about why I wrote the book, and then, a little bit of the argument, and then talk about contemporary politics, maybe do a little soft shoe, and then we'll just sort of take questions and stuff. I guess the first place I noticed, if any of you are observers, and presumably all of you are, if you're not, you're a real masochist. You're showing up here. But you've either been called a fascist, or someone you respect and admire has been called a fascist or a Nazi, or whatever like that. And I get called a Nazi all the time. Particularly from people who think if you type something in an email in all caps, it's just gotta be true. You know? And one of the most amazing things in the course of writing of this book coming out is how many people, first of all, would have the twisted soul to say the kinds of things that they do, but the total lack of self-consciousness to understand the irony of it. I'll give you an example. I've gotten, independently, at least a half dozen emails from people who said, in one phrase or another, how terrible it was that the Goldbergs weren't wiped out in the Holocaust. And I'm like, because this book is so terrible and how dare I. So I've written a book called Liberal Fascism, and someone's writing me saying how it would have been a good thing if I and my entire family had been wiped out in the death camps. Any irony here? Any sense of, do you hear what you're saying when you point this out? And so, the first time I noticed this was, really noticed it closely was, I was a little policy gnome at the American Enterprise Institute years ago, and I was there when the bell curve came out. And I remember sitting at home, no doubt drunk, and watching like the local news intro segment on the bell curve. And the first 30 seconds of it, they introed with clips from Nuremberg rallies. And they're saying, a disturbing new book raises the possibility of blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I know Charles Murray. I like Charles Murray. Whatever you think about the bell curve, and you can have a perfectly good, valid argument pro or con about the bell curve. Charles Murray's a soaked-to-the-bone libertarian, right? He doesn't think the government is qualified to collect your garbage. And the idea that he wants to put people in camps is a little odd, And it's when it sort of first dawned on me that this thing, which I've since done a lot of research on, that this use of fascism and Nazism as a way to simply say bad guys. Orwell notices it as early as 1946 in Politics and English Language when he writes that fascism has come to mean simply anything not desirable. And the best working definition, and David knows this far better than I do, the best working definition in American politics today of a fascist is simply a conservative who's winning an argument. But it sort of, this always sort of bothered me. I went to Rhoda Day School, okay, the Upper West Side of Manhattan. We were among the only conservatives in the Upper West Side. We were basically like Christians in ancient Rome, you meet Riverside Park, draw a little C in the dirt, give the high sign, I'll meet you in the catacombs under Sabars. And so I grew up, learning probably more about the Holocaust than about Judaism, and I never understood why my guys got to be called the Nazis. It bothered me a great deal. Nazism, I was taught, was pretty darn bad, And when you look into it, you realize is that and there weren't a lot. Last time I checked, at least, there weren't a lot of Nazi Goldbergs. There wasn't, Reichsfuhrer Goldberg or Herr Kuberdorfer, Greenberg or whatever they call him. And you realize that basically Nazi occupied this place in liberal psychology of just people to demonize, people that you don't have to listen to, people who are wrong. And the more you look into it, you realize that, as I argue in the book, liberalism is a political religion. Liberalism is a political religion, like all the isms of the left, in one way or the other. And it's really a word for heretic. It's really a word for somebody who refuses to go along with the progressive zeitgeist, someone who refuses to sort of march to the same drummer. One of the most fascist statements that you have in American life, and it's said every day on college campuses, is if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. It's essentially an argument that says everybody is political, and if they are not pulling oars in the same direction as the forces of truth, justice, and goodness, then they aren't just wrong, they just aren't just bystanders or apathetic or anything like that, they are problems, and they need to be solved.